I invite my colleagues in this panel to sit here, please, with me. Yep. Because we are going to present ourselves. There is also Cristina Gallach, which is not here. He has been this morning here with us, but we have a video for her. Okay, this panel is about these national language technology programs in Europe, and I will present a brief overview of this. Then there is Cristina Gallach, which we will have a short video for presenting the Spanish program for language technology. There is also Lucie that is going to present the one from France, Magnus, the one from Sweden, and we also have Carl to present the one from Denmark. At the end, we will have a short time for questions. Okay? Good. Okay, I think we all are aware now that there is one elephant in the room, which is the language technology, which is maybe the most important part of artificial intelligence. Now we have many advanced applications. Most of them were unthinkable when we started the European Language Equality Project. Even more exciting results are expected in the near future. Every day we have news, very surprising, about the new capabilities of large language models, also multimodal models. So it's clear that language technology is one of the most relevant technologies for our society, and also has a fast-growing economic impact. And as we have seen today, language technology is not equally developed for all European languages. And also, what we see is that the national programs has financed very few language technology in the past with respect to what we expect in the future. So this is more or less the landscape of national programs in Europe. The official motto of Europe is United in Diversity. So this is a good example of how diverse is our continent. As far as we know, well, at least when we did the study and the desk research for this, and we studied all countries in Europe, we realized that only 4 countries has dedicated programs for language technology. One is Iceland, Denmark, Estonia, and Spain at that time. And they continue maybe with others, and hopefully in the near future for more. In most of the artificial intelligence programs, national programs, there were cited, but very few, maybe without dedicated funding, language technology. Language technology was something that for the AI community was not that important. Or maybe at least for the programs the countries were developing. So we have many countries where we had not at all language program, no funding, or maybe even no mention at all of language technology. So we think that there is an immense need for this pan-European coordination. So trying to be also united in diversity, but not as we look like now here. And putting also language technology into the national IR strategies and also policies for languages, which we think are crucial to maintain our cultural and technological development if we want. It's up to us. We have the experts, we have the data, and we have the superpower computing. So this is for the discussion, so later on. And now maybe we can pass the video from Cristina.
Good afternoon. Apologies for not being present now in Brussels and for addressing you by video, but urgent responsibilities brought me back to Madrid. I want, first of all, to congratulate you all, organizers and participants, for your successful second annual European Language Equality Conference. Many thanks for inviting me to address you briefly, and I am also sending warm regards to my fellow panelists. Let me start with the basis. The Spanish government approved a strategic project called New Economy of Language just over a year ago. The objective of this project is to mobilize public and private investment in order to maximize the value of Spanish and the co-official languages in the process of digital transformation on a global scale. As you know well, together with the Spanish, or Castilian as some call it, we have three co-official languages: Catalan, Basque, and Galician. One of the strategic actions is dedicated to promoting a knowledge base in Spanish and co-official languages so that the tools of artificial intelligence can be used in native language properly. We also work on the implementation of the National Language Technology Plan and in the creation of an academic network of excellence in artificial intelligence and the necessary regulatory bodies, such as a dedicated agency, among others. Let me also mention a few specific actions undertaken so far. To start, we approve a grant of 5 million euro to the Royal Spanish Academy for the execution of the Spanish Language in Artificial Intelligence project. The objective of this activity, which is now taking place, and several other that are developing, are centered in the development of the technology and tools necessary for artificial intelligence in Spanish and to promote the development of the industry based on language technologies. These linguistic resources, tools and language models will be made available to researchers, companies and other organizations in an open, accessible manner and in suitable formats for their use and reuse. In fact, some of them are already available. We also launched a package of subsidies for the integration of artificial intelligence in value chain, together with a substantial soft loans that will be made available to national language technology companies very soon. Let me move to multilingualism and to our co-official languages multilingual language project. We take multilingualism very seriously. We have launched, in fact it was last year, a grant of 7.5 million euros to finance the creation of a solid knowledge base in the co-official languages Catalan, Galician and Basque, so that their inclusion in technological applications is profitable and attractive for the administration and companies. Our country has an enormous linguistic richness that allows enriching the training of machines with natural language and waiving relations with Portuguese, especially considering the progress achieved by the multilingual activity that the institutions have developed in recent decades. The regional specific projects object of our direct concession are AINA for the Catalan language, Gaitu for the Basque language, NOS for the Galician, and Vives for the Valencian. Let me now move to briefly explain our system of national strategic projects financed by the European Union Next Generation funds. The strategic projects for reform and transformation of the economy are basically groups of specific funds that go to specific areas of our economy. We have, in fact, 12 of these projects, which in Spain we call them PERTEs. The acronym is already now in our society a symbol of investment and transformation. The specific language economy PERTE is valued 1,100 million euros. That means that this is the amount of EU funds Next Gen that goes to the different areas that have an impact on language and digital transformation. In specific, the language PERTE has 4 key areas of action. One is artificial intelligence, language processing, and everything that has to do with the impact of investment in these areas. The second one is related to science, to universities, and in this field there are a number of investments to ensure that the scientific production in Spanish is widely diffused in all the areas in which science is key, and ensure that not only the English production is massively available around. The third area has to do with the promotion of the knowledge of the Spanish language itself across the world. And our fourth area of action is linked to the cultural industries. The world sings more and more in Spanish. The production of a Spanish film industry is increasing, television series, and the music in Spanish is exponentially growing, including podcasts and other very important areas of production of cultural activities. And we try to move along the logic cycle, the logic economic cycle, from innovation to startups, founding startups, to developing these industries in middle-sized companies and big-sized companies. All these in the realm of language and language technologies. And why now? Well, because the unstructured data has now, or is now prevailing in all the cosmos of data that we live through, and the importance of models, artificial intelligence-based linguistic models, is more and more central to the development of services and applications. So this is a key moment for us to invest. And what for? Well, as you know well, for translators, for support of the cultural production, for conversational assistance, for the detection of fakes, for automatization, etc. We find more and more specific applications for these areas of action. We are convinced that this is a key opportunity for the Spanish language to move on and the co-official languages. Why? Because yes, there are several major platforms and multinational companies that are caring about and addressing these issues, but there are areas which are not covered. So we have to move swiftly in order to cover them. Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure to be with you today.
Now, I think Lucie.
Hi everyone, so my name is Lucie Gianola, and I will be presenting today to you what is the main instrument of our strategy in France for language technologies. Just to introduce myself, I work for the Ministry of Culture. I am initially from the NLP research community in France, and I see myself as a link between this community and the political decision-making people in France. So just to clarify, I do not take decisions, political decisions by myself. I try to communicate what would be necessary for this industry to political decision-making people. So we are in a context in France at the moment that is really focused on promotion of French. It was one of the wishes of President Macron when he became president. He decided that the promotion of French and languages of France would be very important for the duration of him being president. So, a side note also, we count in France more than 80 languages that we name languages of France. It's not only regional languages, but languages from the immigration and then also the French Sign Language. So this also includes languages spoken on the metropolitan territory, but also lots of languages spoken on the territories from Guyana, Polynesia, and in the islands. So this ambition to promote French, the flagship of this politics is actually the Cité internationale de la langue française. It is a cultural and leisure project led by the President Macron, which implies the renovation of a chateau, so a castle, from the Renaissance era, that is located in a city which is called Villers-Cotterêts, 80 kilometers from Paris. And this is a very symbolic place because in this castle in 1539, King François Ier signed a decree that said that French would be used in all legal and official documents over Latin. So quite symbolic, but this is the moment that we see that French became the official language of France. So the site will be dedicated to exhibition on the French language, French communities, French languages, French-speaking world also. And, the castle is quite big, so some spaces were planned to be occupied by the permanent exhibitions, and some other were available to offer some other projects on the available premises. And that's how we came with this idea that we could create a platform for language technologies. So the renovation of the castle was a total budget of 200 million euros, and it will be opening in September. Just a few pictures. So on the left, you have the chapel of the castle, which has been fully renovated, and it is said that the king signed the decree right there. We don't know exactly, but that's what he said. On the left, this is the Cour d'Office. So that's one of the courtyards during the works. Hopefully, they are done by now. And another picture. This is one of the courtyards that was covered by a glass roof from upward view and under. Okay. So the language technology situation in France is described as follows. We count more or less than 200 companies of all sizes, meaning we count some SMEs that are fully dedicated to language technologies, and also big companies that have some departments dedicated to language technologies. We also have a strong and dynamic academic community that I'm pretty sure you are aware with. Some of you work with them, so you know them in our laboratories. And many collaborations are already leading to innovation for French and languages of France. One of our big projects that happened in the last year was the development of the Bloom model that was supported by our national computer, Jean Zay. We have also many projects for languages of France. I just cited one, for example, which is the implementation of a predictive keyboard for Alsatian. So Alsatian is a language spoken in the eastern part of France. We also are working on the discoverability of French content on the internet. That is a subject that we work with Quebec, so the French-speaking county in Canada. So that's quite dynamic, quite interesting. There is some things that have been done. However, the situation is that no direct national funding or program for language technologies has been implemented for many years. As German said, the funding for language technology mainly comes from AI programs. We also see that the different types of companies have different needs. Some of them will need some computing capacity, some of them will need some visibility. And of course, as everywhere, I think, around the world, we have in France a growing attention for AI and language technologies since what I would call the ChatGPT shockwave, which is both positive and both negative in some effects. Just to give you a simple example, we have seen lastly a project that was made by a really big concert hall in France, classical concert hall. After the release of ChatGPT, they discovered, well, not discovered, of course, but suddenly they were interested by indexing many audio records of conferences, of interviews of classical music specialists. And the plan was to use ChatGPT to do that. So that is, in our point of view, very problematic, because the academic research community has been trying to access to data, linguistic data, for many years. It is really difficult for many issues that have been discussed already today, copyright issues, privacy issues, all that. And suddenly, some institutions, at least we are seeing it, seems to be really easily relying to American technologies to do things that could be done with sovereign technologies. So we would like to prevent that, actually. So the scope of the center that we are having at Villers-Cotterêts is directed towards four main public, if I may say. First of all, the industry. So we would like to offer some startup creation programs, so incubation programs, because we think that it is quite difficult for, well, some entrepreneur does not have the right means to, it is really difficult for individual people to access to data and things like that. So we hope that having this center will ease these matters. We would like also to use the center as a way to offer public procurements so that the situation with the concert hall that I just mentioned would not repeat itself, ideally. Well, we will see. We would like also to offer some research program with quite classical means, if I may say, funding for PhD, postdocs, research projects, some research residencies, opportunities, hosting conferences, and being really a part of the research community in France. One thing that is really important in our opinion also is to work on technology transfer and valorization, because although there are many very interesting and things with a very good results that are made in the research communities, we would like to work on the models deployment, for example, so to ensure that those technologies are really used in the industry by the institutions also, that they are known, that people know that the technology can be developed in France. They do not have to go directly to ChatGPT just because they think this is the solution they have seen everywhere. Also, of course, we would like to work on the data collection, creation. So French has been said many times today that we are quite, our situation is not so bad regarding many other languages in Europe. However, for all the languages of France that I've mentioned, the situation is very different. And we have to work for Breton, for Corse, for Occitan, for many, all those languages that for some of them have a very, very few speakers, especially in the French Polynesia. And also, we would like to offer some scientific mediation programs with some cultural programs, exhibitions, artistic workshops, training and courses. And the aim of this scientific mediation program is to go toward the public, toward the non-specialists, people who are sometimes afraid of AI, who are aware that AI exists, but do not really understand how it is working. And we would like to offer them a way to get into the language technology, into AI through language technologies. Okay, so I will be going a little bit faster because I see the time is, the clock is going. So the aim is globally to foster relationships between stakeholders, focus development for French and languages of France, and act as a central hub for language technologies of France. So the funding for the language technologies globally in France, regarding the center, we are planning on an estimated budget of 2 million euros per year. That would be financed through the Ministry of Culture and our national strategy for AI. And we are planning on a kick-off funding of 4 million euros from the France to 2030 strategy, which is a huge innovation plan. We are also planning, so this is through the Ministry of Culture on programs for call for proposals starting in 24-25 with an estimated budget of 30 million euros that would be fully dedicated to language technologies in the industry from the Ministry of Culture. Also, we just had last week or 10 days ago new announcces regarding AI. From the President Macron at the Vivatech conference. He announced 50 million euros for the upgrading of the Jean-Zay supercomputer that I already mentioned. We have also 250 million euros planned to finance an exascale supercomputer that will be, the European Union will be also funding it for 250 million euros. 40 million euros have been announced for large models, not specifically language model, but large models, and also 50 million euros for French language databases. So what we can see is that the funding is still a bit scattered. However, some funding is finally directed explicitly to language technologies. And our aim is to make Villers-Cotterêts the center acting as the central platform to manage funds and activities. We have done quite hard work of networking with industries, our national industries. You can see some of them here. Some of them are very famous, like Airbus, Orange. EDF is our electricity provider, national electricity provider. You are of course familiar with ELDA. And we have also many smaller SMEs that are really interested in benefiting from the programs that we are planning to offer. So in a nutshell, the situation actually in France, at the moment in France, is an economical, political, and cultural momentum because ChatGPT put a spotlight on language technologies. When I say what I do to people that, I introduce myself, I don't have any more to tell. Well, language technologies, this is technologies, that you use today, every day with your phone, etc. I say, well, do you know ChatGPT? And people are like, oh yeah, of course. And so this eases the process a lot. With also the downsides I have already said. We are in a cultural and diplomatic policy to promote French and languages of France, And this combination is a powerful argument for decision makers. So this is my job. And also we are on our way towards a coordinated effort, especially financial, for language technologies. I have not mentioned it, but we are working hand in hand with the Ministry for the Economy and Digital Transition. And we have a lot of assets to leverage with the computing capacity, the research community, and all the companies that are interested in the project. And one of the main challenges that remains is how to promote language technologies when artificial intelligence is what makes the headlines. But this is, I think, a problem we all have here. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. My name is Magnus Sahlgren. I'm head of research for natural language understanding at AI Sweden, and I am also affiliated with Silo, just as Lucie, in the Sahlgren initiative, and it will become apparent why I'm doing that. So I'm here to say a few words about the national AI program that we have in Sweden, and we call this AI Sweden. And this is something that we started in 2019. As a joint initiative from government and a set of partner organizations, basically representing the entire Swedish society, so both public organizations like government authorities and even smaller actors in the public sphere, also private sector, both the very large Swedish companies as well as startups in the AI tech domain, and also academia, of course. And the mission from the beginning was to accelerate the use of AI and adoption in Sweden. And this is still the ongoing mission. The center is formally funded by the government through the Swedish Innovation Agency, Vinnova. But we also have the partner organization that contributes a yearly fee to the center. And we are right now more than 100 organizations, and we're growing all the time. We try to grow in a conscious way, so we pick organizations and leaders that we think can actually contribute to AI adoption, and that's quite important for us. And the way that we try to do this is several different perspectives on this. So one is the organizational challenges, which we call AI transformation and adoption. And I'm guessing that many of you here have belonged or belong to organizations that have been through an AI transformation journey. And I guess that you can agree that it can be challenging, but also quite rewarding if you can actually accomplish this. And we try to promote this in several ways. We have courses, we have support for leaders, and we have tools and various types of monitoring tools that you can use to sort of measure your AI transformation. Another important part of this is the ecosystem and building relations. So the motto of the entire organization is invest together, share with many. And this is reflected in the yearly fee that companies and organizations pay. And then we can act as a neutral framework where you can collaborate and share resources and learnings. And then lastly, we also have an applied part, which we call the labs, of course. And I'm leading one of them, which is the Natural Language Understanding Lab. We also have something we call a data factory, which is a place where organizations can share data and do data processing and also test new types of hardware. So we get hardware from our hardware providers like NVIDIA or AMD, and companies can try out different types of hardware in this data factory. And then we also have a dedicated effort into edge learning and decentralized algorithms, which is typically in the automotive industry or healthcare, or even in space. So we have edge learning in space, which I think is really cool. But what is even cooler is natural language understanding, which is the lab that I'm leading. And this is something that we started 1.5 years ago with the explicit intention of building large language models in Sweden for Sweden. And we started doing that 1.5 years ago, and then we realized that, Swedish is a very small country. How are we going to get all the data in this? And so we decided, let's build a Nordic one instead. So Swedish is a small language, but we have close friends. So we have compiled more than 300 billion tokens of cleaned, deduplicated training data in the North Germanic languages. So that's Swedish, Danish, Norwegian, Icelandic, and as it happens, the model also speaks Faroese without us really realizing that. We also, of course, included English and code in the model because it becomes better at solving tasks. We have trained a set of models already, up to 40 billion parameters. So this is one of the largest natively built models in the world. It's the only large language model that I'm aware of that actually is built to represent a language group. And we stopped at 40 billion parameters. Our initial plan was to go to 175, but development in the field when it comes to data meant that we stopped growing model and instead went back to the data processing. The models are also available in instruction-tuned variants, some of them, and you can find them on Hugging Face, and we have opted for a sort of restricted pre-release to make sure that nothing bad happens. These are generative language models, but they are available on Hugging Face. Something that we realized when we trained our models, we looked at the utilization of the hardware. We have trained on the Berzelius SuperPod in Sweden, which is NVIDIA. We have quite high utilization in our training. And that, together with the fact that we have trained in the Swedish power grid, which has a very low carbon intensity compared to other countries, means that our models are extremely energy efficient and environmentally friendly. Probably the most environmentally friendly large language model that is available today. And you can see some evaluations here. Apparently, the model is really good at Danish also, so that's great. It's the best model for the North Germanic languages, of course, but we also evaluate in English, which is the right table there, and we compare it to OpenAI's GPT-3, the Da Vinci model, and sometimes we even beat that on English. So apparently, at least it works. So this is sort of a sanity check. And I agree with Lucie that we need to work more on evaluation. I also want to stress the importance of us actually producing artifacts in Europe. We need to build actual models. We have to stop talking about building models. We're just going to have to do it. And we have tried to be as compliant as we can with regards to data. But if I can give you a message, just do it. Please stop talking and build models. We have other resources in Sweden also when it comes to AI and language technology. So when it comes to funding, mainly the Swedish Innovation Agency funds innovation projects, so it's a bit higher TRL levels. We also have a very large project that funds basic research in the field of AI, which is the Wallenberg AI and Autonomous Systems and Software Program. That's for basic research and education. When it comes to infrastructure, we have the National Academic Infrastructure for Supercomputing in Sweden, NICE, which collects all the supercomputers. So if you're an academic organization, you can apply for access here. And one of the supercomputers is the Berzelius SuperPod, which is currently equipped with 94 DGX nodes, so that's times 8. Which is NVIDIA, of course. It works great. We have had really good experiences with this. When it comes to data, we have the National Language Bank of Sweden, which is our main repository for speech and text. But unfortunately, there is not enough data available for training large language models. So we did all the data collection ourselves, and when you do that in Europe, at the moment, you can't share the data because of the regulatory frameworks. At least that's what our lawyers tell us. But so the sort of picture in Sweden is that we have some good initiatives in AI. We have some components when it comes to funding, infrastructure, data maybe, but the components are not really fitted together in a good way, and there is no national initiative when it comes to language technology. And I'm not really sure if we need that, because language is in a sense solved. I know that you don't agree with this, but it is when it comes to large language models. I think we need to step ahead and look at multimodal language models now. And I think that is covered by AI. So I'll stop there and I hope for questions.
Yes, okay, can you hear me? I'm not used to being captured behind a desk. I usually run around on stage when I speak, so let's see if I can stand here. Yes, my name is Frederik Kirchmeier. I work at the Agency for Digital Government in Denmark. And although we don't have a castle and we don't have things in space, we have one of the only initiatives that is really, really directed towards improving Danish language technology. So what I want to talk about today is kind of how we have been running this initiative and kind of focus on how we work, being a low resource language, and how we try to incorporate different actors. So a little bit of political background here. It all started back in 2019 when Denmark got its first national strategy on artificial intelligence. And within this initiative, we found Danish language technology kind of got incorporated. And I think a large part is due to that we at the same time of the drafting the strategy, we had a commission on Danish language technology that kind of did a really groundbreaking work on kind of summarizing why do we need language technology in AI, what are kind of the barriers for Danish language technology, and kind of gave some really good pointers as to what could be done in order to improve the conditions for Danish language technology. So they kind of copy-pasted that into the national strategy for artificial intelligence, and that's the strategy we have now. Interestingly enough, the initiative it has been financed in a joint government effort between state, regional, and local governments in Denmark. And as you can see, the budget is really modest, 2.6 million euros allocated between 2019 and 2026. What's further interesting is that as time has gone on, it has further been ratified in other political strategies along the way. So there's a really growing political interest and support for the support of language technology further on. Okay, so this is actually what the initiative says on Danish language technology. We need to develop a common Danish language resource bank, and we need to enhance the development of Danish language technology. So in one case, it's really, really concrete. We need to build something. And in another case, it's really vague and open for interpretation. So we have sat down in our team and kind of thought about how can we do this. And we came to the conclusion that as we are a low resource language, we want to focus on language resources rather than models. And I think it has opened up some kind of interesting work for us. So the first thing that we are trying to do is we try to develop high quality resources, both text, speech corpus, and really both small-scale, domain-specific text corpus, and also lexical resources. We have really been doing a lot of kind of small projects all around on kind of trying to give some good resources for the Danish language. We are working on sharing resources, so what's available. One thing that the Committee on Danish Language Technology kind of concluded was that there were a lot of resources available in all Danish public institutions. They were just spread across the whole field of organizations. So we have been collecting these resources, we have been writing metadata to describe them, and we have collected them in the Danish language bank. Yeah. Now we are sort of seeing what is happening out there with ChatGPT. And at one point, our minister was called into a question session with the parliament when ChatGPT was released, and the discussion quickly went into Terminator movies. So we kind of felt like there's a dire need of knowledge about language technology and what it can do, and certainly what it cannot do. And kind of how we can move forward from here. So we are kind of trying to go into bringing about this knowledge and bring the knowledge out to all kind of public institutions in Denmark. And lastly, as Denmark is a small country, we also have a very small language technology community. So we are trying to facilitate networking, trying to bring people together from all kinds of organizations, people who develop small businesses, researchers, and public institutions to kind of have discussion ongoing on these issues here. And I think it has really given a lot into the whole open source community. Like we are really, really lucky to have a lot of private organizations and enterprises that kind of develops language technology tools or models, and then they just go and open source it. So we are really, really happy to see that, and we want to facilitate that further by creating better conditions for networking. Being really, really vague has some issues, but it's also, as I said, a great strength of our initiative, I think. Because language technology, and we all know this, is it's constantly changing. New things are being developed. There are new methods, new data sets, new tools, and so are the people that are actually working with it. And we want to enhance development by helping the people who are actually developing the tools or Danish language technology in general. So we are working on a yearly basis where we write our program, and we revise this program a lot. We have some long-term projects that goes across many years, and then we have some short-term projects that kind of is taken up as we are running along. And the reason we need that is we are in close collaboration with the actors in the Danish language community, language technology community, and we are really relying on their input. So we are really just writing a strategy, going out and collect insights from the actors, going back to the drawing desk and adjust the strategic goals, and then we start our projects and then we collect insights. And it's running this every year. Recently we had 2 workshops in the beginning of the year where we invited over 70 actors, and they full day just evaluating what we have done so far and what needed to be done in the future to improve Danish language technology. So it's really to say that we are doing this in close collaborations with the actors that are actually developing things here. And what you can see then is also on the projects that we have kind of released and the initiatives we are taking. We have, in 2020, we released our Common Danish Language Resource Bank, which is called Sprogteknologi.dk, which kind of gathers all these language resources that are available. Later in 2020, we started the work on the Central Word Register for Danish, which is basically an index for the most common Danish words, so that you can kind of incorporate them into software and stuff like that. And it will, when the dictionary is updated, when a spelling of a word is updated, it will also be updated instantaneously within software. And then we got a lot of comments from the community that there were needed more knowledge dissemination and more networking. So we really increased our efforts there by 2021, and we do this by holding an annual conference. We have topic discussions and meetings and workshops where we just openly invite everybody that wants to join us. And then actually last week, we started our project on creating a large speech corpus containing over 2,000 hours of Danish speech, both structural speech, but also spontaneous speech. And it's a quite challenging task to kind of accomplish that. And as we move forward now, we're going to look more towards the European, especially the language data space and the old edicts. And I'm going to end in a second with just what we are kind of expecting from them. And this is just to say that we have a lot ongoing, and we also finished a lot, but I don't have the time to kind of go into it all. So I hope to just give a general idea of like what we're kind of trying to accomplish. Yeah. So here to end with, as we're going to talk about language space, data space, and the old edicts, I wanted to point to what we in Denmark hope that can help, that this can bring forward. And the first thing is, of course, as a low resource language, you want text and speech resources. So we hope that it really can facilitate both sharing, but also the creation of resources so that we can use them. And we would be glad to see if there was also a lot of focus on open source. The second pointer is, as we have also mentioned earlier today, evaluation and transparency in large language models. We don't have an idea of how these models kind of work in Danish and how they process the Danish language, so we really need insights. But we also need objective criteria to kind of evaluate these models in order to choose them and use them in product and software and in end-user solutions. And then, of course, another kind of on the point here, legal clarity in the general domain of AI, but also in LT. We talked about copyrights in the Norwegian model, so we're still not sure in Denmark how we can use copyrighted materials to train models and then release them. But we hope that the language data space on the LDX can kind of give some guidelines. And lastly, we have almost zero to none infrastructure in Denmark, and it's really becoming a huge problem. There are attempts to generate large-scale models for Danish, but from what I've heard, all the data centers can't really process the data. So they kind of break down and come to a standstill. So this is really becoming a dominant issue within the language technology community in Denmark. Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I prepared a few questions to start, but maybe I think we have some minutes for discussion and maybe entering into the last session, I think, about the language data space and EDIC, as you have suggested a little bit. So my question is that if we as individual countries and a representative of different languages and cultures, very diverse in Europe, if the national funding is sufficient for developing this modern language technology, as, for instance, Magnus has already said, just start doing. We don't know if you have funding or not in Sweden, but of course, you already have some models that already works, and it seems to work fine. Maybe in France, you expect to have some funding, no, in the near future for developing some models, data, etc. And in Denmark, you still are wondering where to run these models because maybe the infrastructure is not sufficient. So. What's your opinion about this? So we have sufficient for developing each country by its own this language model? Is something that we need to address individually, or is something that we need to go together? Maybe this pan-European coordination, I don't know what you say about that.
Should I start? I don't think we have nearly enough funding, at least not on a national level, at least not in Sweden. But on the other hand, I mean, the way that we did it, we had the basic funding from the Swedish Innovation Agency, which paid for our time. But then we get access to our supercomputer, Berzelius, which allowed us to, we used, I think, a third of the cluster for at least like half a year or something to train our models. So that was a significant allocation. But that is in place, right? And you can get that allocation. And then the data, we simply just did it, right? So you don't really need all that much funding if your goal is just to produce artifacts. But on the other hand, we didn't really know what we were doing at the start, so we had to learn while we were going, right? But it turned out good in the end. But yes, much more funding. And if we want to strengthen the European landscape, we also need to collaborate more. Especially like we did it with the North Germanic languages. I think it makes sense, not only because it increases the data, it also increases the quality of the model to have typological variety in the data.
So your point is that obviously we need maybe more funding, but what we need maybe is to collaborate more and cooperate more.
And connect everything to the resources we have, yes.
Yeah. Well, I think there's never sufficient money for anything. That's just a general point. But I would say that if you just want to focus on developing a large language model, of course you can find the funds and all these kind of things. But what we can't forget is that we also need to sustain the models, and it needs to follow the development in the languages around all of Europe or in Denmark or whatever. So the funding doesn't need to be a one-off thing. It has to be continuously, because we need to kind of train the models and improve them and update them as society develops. So there's always need for more money.
Yeah, I'm in line with what has been said, and in a different scale, I would say in France, sometimes in some lab we see that some private companies such as Meta come and recruit researchers. And I think if we could pay these people better in the public sector, maybe they would make a different choice. So of course, more funding would be very great for this issue.
So you mean salaries?
Yeah, of course. That's one of the aspects. I mean, we said that we need people, well, we could create experts, and someone just in the panel before said we have to keep the brains. So to keep the brains, we have to have the means to keep the brains, actually.
These experts, yeah. There is another question I want to say before entering to the other people. That is, in the ELE program, we designed it just having a look at the data, etc., the budget for each language. So we said between maybe 20, 30 million per language, up to 50 something. It depends on the level of development of the language. Is that sufficient? It's too much per language? It's how much funding needs a language?
So from my perspective, it depends on what you want to accomplish, right? If that only includes like getting access to raw data for pre-training and maybe building like generative models, it might be enough. But if you want to do also reinforcement learning with human feedback or instruction tuning, it's not nearly enough.
So we underestimate the numbers.
Again, it depends on what we want to accomplish.
Okay. I think, I don't know if Carl wants to say.
Yeah, but I mean, every language needs a sort of stepping stone. And I mean, 30 million euros for example, Danish would be a huge step towards developing something that can really help us off. So, yeah, that would be more than enough for Danish right now.
Okay. Questions? Yeah. There are some there, some other there.
Hello, I talked earlier about industrial applications of language models. And it occurs to me in this discussion, this last bit of discussion, the end of the pipeline is entirely missing. I mean, if we're building artifacts like Magnus wants us to do, which is a good idea, artifacts can sometimes be just for the joy of it, which is all good, but we're sort of doing engineering here. So there's a great commercial pull for getting these things out in place. And we shouldn't start thinking about dislodging public funding for stuff before we've explored how much commercial pull there actually is, because there is enormous commercial pull. I've seen it. So there's ways of doing stuff with the artifacts we're building, and we should very carefully make an inventory of them, because that's the beauty of being in Europe, that there's 24 official languages and a load of others, and all of them need tooling and things to work with. And some of those will pay their way. So we can't stop by saying, how much money should we propose to the Commission? We should think about who else is interested in what we're building.
I was not saying the Commission was needed to do that. Just funding for doing this thing. Maybe the companies want to pay that. That would be fantastic.
Thank you very much again, and sorry for disturbing your community with lots of questions. I have 3 questions. Of course, everything is not money. We're engineers, but engineering has a limit. So we have to put also the European cultural perspective, as the French are doing in a way. And the question is how it affects the new regulatory form of the Commission. I agree with your telling your story about how we can find the money, not from the Commission. And we are not only 24 official languages in Europe. Europe is a broader thing than the Union. So how it affects the regulatory form which put for artificial intelligence, the Commission, your sector. A second is, okay, the Swedish guy told we have to do things. What are we doing with ChatGPT? Well, still we don't have an answer. We have the technology, we have everything. We have the money, we have the knowledge, we have the guards, we have, where is the response on doing? And as third, okay, we have, generally in the data sector, we have a lapse of experts, like we do in language and in artificial intelligence. So some years ago, it was proposed by the speaking person, why don't we come with cooperation, with synergies, with translators? I think we did. But what about glossologists? As engineers, we are limited in our knowledge in these things, as we are occupied in language. Thank you very much.
Somebody wants to answer this?
I think there was one thing directed to me. So the response to ChatGPT, well, we do have it for Swedish, chat.ai.se. You can go there and chat. There is in Finnish, there is a FinGPT, which is also instruction tuned by Silo. You had the OpenGPTX guys who showed you also chat thing. So we do have things in Europe, and we have Lighton in France who are building really cool stuff also. And Aleph Alpha, of course, in Germany. They also have the Luminous model, which is a chat-based thing. But if we want to compete with GPT-4 for Europe, that's an entirely different development. And that will require funding.
Good. More questions? Somebody wants to make any additional point?
I'm conscious that we have a lot of male voices coming from the audience. Are there any ladies that would like to pose a question?
Yep.
I'm afraid this is going to be on an entirely different subject. I'm a translator and interpreter from the Belgian Chamber of Translators and Interpreters, and I absolutely adored the Norse sagas when I was younger. And they were in bilingual editions, Old Norse and English in the United States, of course. And I was wondering if to solve your data, what is it called? Data curation problem for the smaller Norse group, if you use the Old Norse sagas, which are free of copyright and everything, if you were able to train your models on that kind of data, if it's interesting for you to be able to have models that take into account the medieval language, the development to modern language, and the future developments as the language changes. But it's a completely different subject.
No, I don't think so. It's completely on point, I would say, and very interesting question. So we did consider training on older material. The problem is that we need 300 billion tokens, and there is, small amounts of old material available. But this is something that we are currently discussing now in Sweden, how to, for example, include historical language and also minority languages, which is still in part of the North Germanic language family. And we do have some ideas, but this is this is not a development project, this is a research project. And we lack funding for that, so.
Yeah, of course, I think there are so many topics also for, not for research on that topic. For instance, if there is sufficient data for all languages in Europe, which maybe not, because we don't have sufficient maybe for certain languages to create something that works similarly to ChatGPT, or GPT-4. So it is a research question. We don't know. For instance, still maybe if we do multilingual models and maybe similar models, similar cultures can help maybe, but it still is something that we need to address. And like this, so many other topics for research, not just developing things and try to be on production and application. So, some final question? Yep.
Well, just a short comment on what you just said. We actually tried to use medieval French texts for one of our projects, and it turned out that all the medieval French texts are copyrighted by the editors in the 19th century. So it's not as simple as that. Yeah, you wouldn't have thought it. I have a small question though, because one thing I noticed is that renovating the building in France cost 200 million euros, whereas language resources was estimated to 50 million euros. And maybe are we sort of talking about the financing in the wrong way? Should we argue? Do we have better arguments?
Yeah, so just to remind you how the project came, the political vision was to renovate the castle that was in very bad state, actually. And this is a political decision, you see, so there is some storytelling behind. It is for the historical symbol and all of that. So I am absolutely in line with what you are saying, but it's like we are coming now to talk to the politician decision makers, and they're like, oh, we already put 200,000 millions in the castle, so do you still want 15 million more for something else? And yeah, yes, we want it. So it's a bit of a game, actually, you see. But the budget for the renovation of the castle is well, a much bigger issue than the language technologies and language promotion issue that we are talking today.
Okay, thank you. I think we are running out of time, so thank you very much